It's a
He
pleasure
claps.
to be here always.
I love the
I
one
was
clap.
pressing my knuckle, but yeah, that too. Someone's got to clap, right?
That's
No,
right.
but seriously, thank you for having me. I appreciate it always.
Well, as we were discussing, so the purpose of this episode, for brothers that have been a part of my Lodge of Discussion, I completely ripped off the format of this from Right Worshipful Brother Bill Edwards. It was Ecclesia Lodge under dispensation at the time. I know they have a number now, but hey, we never let numbers get in the way of a good story. And they do a style of observant masonry or traditionally observant masonry, where they actually assign a complete book, and they did not do this one, but then they take a question and they apply it to the topic or the theme of the book. And think of like a festive board for discussions where the actual lodge is like a horseshoe shape, as you would see in a festive board or a table lodge, and every brother gets a little tiny candle and you turn it on when it's your turn to speak. Everybody speaks and then you listen, and it's a great back and forth. It's really one of my favorite programs. Seriously, if you'd like to learn more about this at the end of this podcast, you can email me. It's podcast@craftsmanonline.com. There is no secret sauce. I'm not afraid of sharing with what works and what doesn't work, to be honest with you. But this has been a great conversation. And I knew that if we were going to talk about Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism and Freemasonry, then Franklin Rings is the guy I need to talk to.
I'm your man.
So that's why he's here. Actually, the whole reason that I I thought of you actually is I was getting ready to do a Lodge of Discussion and I needed a topic. So I'm like, we had just talked, I think we did an episode a couple years ago about Stoicism and Freemasonry.
We did, yeah.
So I picked up my Marcus Aurelius Meditations edition, it flipped through, and then it landed on a page that says, "What is a vice?" And I'm like, boom, Masonic
There
topic.
it is.
Let's do this. So as we've established, you and I, big fans of that. We have different versions of the same book, though,
Which
is crazy. How is that possible?
Translators, man. Translators. I mean, when you're looking at really, really old texts like these, everyone's got a different perspective on what X word means and what Y means, et cetera, et cetera. And when you read translations upon translations throughout different languages throughout time, you get different books of the same book.
All right. Even the format, though, is a little weird because I'm like, dude, we're going to be doing notebook number 7. That's what they call it in my book. And then you're like, oh, you mean book 7? And I'm like, I don't know what book 7. Let's go to your
book 7.
Does yours start with this? No, mine starts with that. Well, we've got different books. But for the purpose of this, as I mentioned, the Lodge of Discussion is a very exoteric program where we ask a question. The question is based off of this, where Marcus Aurelius wrote in one of our versions of the book, "What is a vice? Nothing you haven't often seen before." He also implies that vices are what challenge the independence of our minds, that they are part of the fabric of life, and we must overcome or deal with them. Now, as a Freemason, that really starts to like hit multiple points as to where we are going to go, because the question that I start the Lodge discussion with is, how do Freemasons divest themselves of vices? So as a Stoic with a huge background on Marcus Aurelius and some of the other great thinkers, what comes to mind? What's your answer to that question?
Man, I mean, the first thing off the top of my mind is work hard. I mean, everyone has vices. It's part of the human condition. And I think that's why we all end up being captured by them in some capacity, both as a Stoic, as a brother, and just as a human being in general. So it's all about using the tools you have, whether as a Mason or not, to start to chip away at some of those corners, you know?
Okay. And when you identify a vice, so you look at a vice as a negative thing, as like, I always think of Miami Vice, for example, and the vice cops of like, you know, drugs, alcohol, sex, women, all those crazy things. Like those immediately start coming to my mind. But having done this program a few times, this discussion, some brothers will say, you know, actually sometimes good things can become a vice, like
big time.
Freemasonry, for example.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say anything bad about our craft for sure, but I mean, they say the only difference between a poison and a pleasure is how much you're using, you know?
Very true.
You know,
yeah.
Too much water, you drown. Not enough water, you die. So,
yep. Yeah. Ooh, listen to this already. So deep, so early. This is awesome. But what I mean by Freemasonry can be advice is exactly what you're talking about. Like, there are some guys that spend too much time in Lodge and that at the expense of family and friends and other social connections, that Freemasonry is like their thing, which isn't a bad thing. It's just, as you said, too much water, you drown.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you can kind of think about the pillars too. I mean, I've read and a couple different esoteric texts not related to Stoicism about how the two pillars we stand between as Freemasons, that can be representing one extreme and another extreme, too much or too little. And a lot of people between vice and virtue is really in the middle here, but it's just two different kinds of extremes in the vice. And we're usually bouncing back and forth between the two pillars when we really just need to be in the middle to find
Mm,
that virtue. So you can
mm.
have two extremes.
Man, we are touching on so many different. It feels like it was yesterday. I just did an episode with Brother Cedric Jacobson on the point within a circle and some of the
Mm,
symbolism and the deeper parts of the Holy Saints John and what was it, saints and solstices, and we talked about the planets and the alignment and all of these really cool things. But to your point, that yes, the why do we use that? Why is it such a powerful symbol in Freemasonry and then across all time? And I like the way that you put it, is that yes, that it can signify the beginning and the end of something, or the continuation or the boundaries of it. But also to that thing is that where should you be? You can't draw a perfect circle using a compass without leaving a point somewhere. And that was really
big
kind of
time.
the big point that he left with me. So when you said that, I was like, whoa, bro. Like,
Yeah, I mean, there's an image in my mind when I think about the point within a circle, which is exactly that. Like there's the point, there's the circle, and then there's the two lines that go down the perimeters of the circle. And if you just remove the circle, I mean, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
mm, okay. So back to Marcus Aurelius, not a Freemason, but obviously
I
his,
wish.
yeah, it would have been nice. His words and work have influenced so many of us over
Hmm.
the creation of time. Um, so when you hear he describes a vice as nothing you haven't often seen before, when you look at a vice and kind of the goal that every Mason has, which is trying to be that change inside of themselves, when we talk about the approach of the rough ashlar to the perfect ashlar, where do vices fall in that journey?
Mm.
Mainly divesting them.
Yeah, I mean, so divesting, if you put it that way, it's a process, right? You don't divest and then you're done. Boom, you have a smooth ashlar. I
Hmm.
feel like it's a process. And I think that's something we got to keep in mind in that regard, right? Like it's nothing you haven't seen before because everyone's got them.
Yep.
Everyone's got some sort of poison in their life they're trying to rid themselves of. And, it borderline takes a saint, it takes a saint or a sage in order to be able to find someone who has no vice. I mean, it's borderline superhuman. So, like I was alluding to earlier, I think it's a process. And I think Marcus knew that it's a
Mm.
process, it's a lifelong growth.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And the words of a very wise personal trainer that I used to work with, when he would talk to clients about weight loss, and they're like, "Well, how
Hmm.
come I've been going to the gym for 2 weeks? So how come I haven't seen any results yet?" And we laugh
Oh,
because,
man.
but he's like, "Think about how long it took you to get to the point where you are now. It's going to take this long to get back to where you want to be."
Yes. Yeah, big
That's
time.
that's the journey of the rough to the perfect ashlar.
So true. I mean, there's that quote. Was it Michelangelo who said, I saw the angel in the marble and I sculpted until I set him free. Like
Hmm.
that gets pushed as an allegory towards weight loss a lot. You're
Right.
trimming some of that marble off to find the angel within. I think those are like pretty synonymous. I'm on that quest myself, and that's one where you got to continuously look at yourself. You got to be honest too, which I mean, Aurelius is even known for that early on in his life. He's known as the honest one.
Right. It's interesting too because of vice, as we talked a little bit about the physical part of our bodies, right? And we're all,
Yeah,
I don't want to say consumed or concerned, but we all have an outlook on our outwardly appearance, right? We want to
of
be
course.
always looking good. But vices are the one unique thing that can affect both internal and external self. And we often think of them
Hmm.
as external distractions, but it's also, as part of to what you're saying, it's a lot of retraining routines, processes, habits that we've formed over the years. And I feel like this is where, as Freemasons, we get these unique things called working tools, which, when we actually put them to work for us, they are a tool that can help alleviate some of this work, like the common gavel or maybe the
Hmm.
compasses. How do you find these working tools that we have help a brother reclaim this independence from a vice?
Yeah, wow. So there's a lot I can riff on there that you just I honestly I think you let the you let the sauce go there. Like these vices, you can see them in the body, but you can't necessarily like see them. They're like an I don't want to say they're an esoteric thing, but they're a conceptual thing that you see done throughout life, but it's not a thing specifically. And I think that's kind of how our working tools are. Like it's kind of the tool to work on something you also can't see with these metaphorical symbolic tools, right?
Mm,
So again, I think about, going back to if this quote is by Michelangelo, like carving until the angel set free, like what are you going to use for that? You're going to use maybe a chisel, maybe a gavel, maybe the two together to try and chisel and push some of these extraneous pieces of yourself out. But yeah, no, I think the tools are absolutely necessary.
mm. So I was reading from my version of Marcus Aurelius Meditations. I have the annotated edition that was written by Robin Waterfield. It's
Hmm.
broken out by notebooks, as I mentioned. So I'm in notebook 7. Franklin has a different version where his is book 7, and he's actually got cool illustrations in his book. I
I
might
do
have to
have
go get
cool.
that one too. But in my book, as we start to talk about what is a vice, and this isn't a chapter, it's just called Notebook 7 for me. And as I said, as I told Franklin, I was, and I'm sure I told you, the listener, I was looking for something to talk about, just thumbing randomly through the pages. Bam, saw what is a vice, and was like, this will be the topic. A little bit deeper into that notebook, Marcus Aurelius advises that we live under the common idea or law that there is one truth which connects us, and that we should love mankind and follow God's lead. And as a Freemason, that also hits, because I'm thinking of all the charges that we hear throughout our degrees, and that reminder we don't necessarily talk about God, although we do mention, before any great or important undertaking, what are we supposed to do? We refer to holding in veneration the supreme architect of the universe with the letter G. We're also told a lot about how to treat fellow brothers, but also members of the human family, which is my favorite way of talking about people. You talked about the
Big
two
time.
pillars, so I kind of want to steer us back over there. How do following the creators, the supreme architect's lead, and also on the other pillar having that love for human or mankind, how does that help a Mason identify which superfluities we need to remove from us?
Man, you're spurring a lot of quotes in my mind. Something pushed by something and then pulled by something else, pushed by drives and pulled by values or something like that.
Mm,
Um, I'm sure the listener can probably look it up. It's something synonymous with that. Like, I think if you have those two positive, undoubtedly positive forces in your world, you have the material, you have your brothers, your family, your civilization, your culture. If they want the best for you, don't want the best for you, you should hopefully want the best for yourself and for them regardless. And then you have God, whatever you believe in, um, pulling you towards virtue, which is what a lot of these Stoics would believe, the logos or whatever they believed in at the time, set virtue into play, and you want to follow that. So you're kind of pushed by your community in one direction. You can think about that as one pillar, and then pulled by deity, and that's the other pillar.
mm. It's also kind of interesting to me as a Freemason to examine that and go, okay, here is a guy who's writing this. When did Marcus Aurelius live? Was it like second century or
Yeah, I think it was like the 100s, I'm pretty sure. Like he
okay?
just missed Christ. We're almost at 2000 years of
Wow.
meditations influencing the world. It's crazy.
That is okay.
Really
So
close.
you're thinking about like lifespan, how people were educated on things back then, what culture and society and self and individual really meant back then, and how it's
Mhm.
changed so much now. But I think the thing that's amazing to me is that he says, hold yourself. It goes a lot to our Masonic ideas as well, which is hold yourself in regard to something higher than you, be accountable
Yep.
to something bigger than you, and think of other people first before you think of yourself. And these are all, to kind of quote where you're going, like all of other modern philosophies have sprung from this, like the golden rule and how we all wish to be treated, right? Is that
Mhm.
doing something good and kind isn't looked as a way to put a coin or an investment into a bank. You're doing it because it's the right thing to do, not for any sort of value or reward.
Yeah, big time. I mean, Marcus Aurelius, I think it's in book 2, book 3, notebook 2, notebook 3. It's somewhere early on in the book. He talks about how human beings are made to be together and to work together,
Mm,
like rows of teeth. They're meant to work together, or like hands and feet. We're made for each other to coordinate together. And so, like, if you do kindness, I personally believe it's going to come back to you, but also like the jaws got to work together. And I don't think one jaw wants to be mean and abrasive to the other jaw, or else things are not going to work out well for the whole organism.
yeah.
And I mean, the Stoics really believed in the Logos. Most of them did anyway, or at least some of them. And the Logos really believed that we were like one big organism living and working together. And so if you're doing something evil, like you're going against the nature of humanity and you're going against the nature of the Logos, and you're really like causing chaos, because we're meant to be together and to work together and to be harmonious.
Mm. It's also interesting too because the being together and surviving through things together and the together everyone achieves more team concept is really popular in a lot of storytelling, not just in
Big
modern
time.
movies, but yeah, throughout. And it's you never really hear about, oh, the person who became an individual and lived on top of a mountain all by themselves for 100 years and found extreme happiness and joy. I'm sure that those folks exist, but to your point that yes, there's always this common desire for us to be with others like us, and I guess that's what makes us humankind, is we want to be around those kind folks. The other thing that came to mind was when you get into meditations, Marcus Aurelius talks a lot about vices as external distractions,
Hmm.
and that we have the power to overcome them, as we talked about. But it's that mindset that you have to hold of loving your fellow man and finding joy in doing good for good's sake. So when it comes to what superfluities do I need to start removing from my life? As someone who has done that very uncomfortable personal inventory, most of us do it at the end of the year as we get ready for a New Year's tradition. But
Hmm.
some of us are kind of keenly aware of people going like, dude, why do you have to be such an asshole? Like that's usually a dead giveaway. But when you realize that certain actions or behaviors that you have tend to have the same outcome with people, then you need to take a step back and go, it's not people that's the problem here. It's me that's the problem here. So, what are the things
Hmm.
that I can do to start changing these outcomes so that they're more productive for everybody? And I think that having those two pillars as a Freemason of going, being accountable to something bigger than me and doing things out of the love for others, now I can start to look at those things that I'm doing that aren't just necessarily hurting me, but preventing me from having those optimal relationships with other people. And those are the superfluities. Those are the waste of times. Those are the vices that are taking away from me being able to be the best version of myself.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I don't recall if it was Marcus or another Stoic, but they talk about how you don't want to do anything that you wouldn't want the public to see.
Mm,
You don't want to do anything that you would want to need to hide, even if you can hide it and there's absolutely no way anyone's going to find out, you don't want to do that. And I've always kind of translated that into my own life, thinking about God in that regard. Like, obviously, he knows completely what's going on, but also, like, it only takes one person looking through your window physically or metaphorically in order to see something one time in order to
hmm.
slip up and feel that shame. But if you just do the right thing and you know what the right thing is, like in your mind, in your heart, the whole 9 yards, in your soul, um, that's really all you need to do. And
Yep.
there's a couple figures I can bring up and talk about that aren't Stoics. You could maybe say they're like kind of lowercase s Stoics, but they even kind of talk about some of this, like follow your soul, be reaching towards that greater good that you know is there, like that idealized version of yourself, and at least move and start aiming towards it. because you're probably not going to get there. But if you're moving towards it, you're going to be moving farther away from the opposite of what's happening, you know?
Mm. Yeah. I also had a thought in my head, but then you landed that one. And it was like instantly it evaporated. I need to start taking better notes of my own thoughts here. That's what I'm learning from myself. But so the magic of editing this awkward moment will not exist.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing.
It'll just disappear just like that. We're talking meditations. We're taking a Stoic look at Freemasonry, examining the work of Marcus Aurelius by bringing back one of our favorite guests, Brother Franklin Rings, on the Craftsman Online podcast. We were talking about working tools, and the square and compasses always give great explanation. It's one of my favorite working tools, and they start explaining how they work together, about setting boundaries and working with other people. How do you look at these as tools that help a Mason live without turmoil? That's a great Stoic statement right there.
Wow. Well, I think turmoil, you're going to have to face it at some point. It's how are you going to face it, though? And that's really a huge part of Stoicism, you know? And I want to get back to the working tools, but Stoicism is really about like, you're going to encounter these problems. How are you going to deal with the problems, though? Are you going to be super emotional and not have any discipline? And then you're going to end up regretting it even further. But I think personally, I always think about the compasses in this regard, like circumscribe your desires, keep them in due bounds with all mankind. You know, I mean, you got to stay within that circle. You got to know how large your circle is. You got to know, when am I doing too much? When am I doing too little? Which is kind of, if you think about it, when it comes to the circumference, almost the same thing. You
Mm,
know, there's too much and too little, and they're both on that perimeter. You don't want to do either of them. It's actually kind of an inverse of the pillar in many ways, but does the same thing. But yeah, I mean, the compasses are huge. The square, I mean, you got to square your actions. You know, if you're not having square actions, it's the same thing with that. Or how private of a life are you living? You know, if someone watched you with unsquared actions, would you feel shame? And
mm.
if you feel shame, I think that's a sure indicator, you know, that you probably have more opportunities than you might think to show and give virtue.
Mm. I remember the point, and you're going to help me connect it here. In that, when you think of the working tools, especially the square, I always feel the
Yeah.
square, man, it just gets a bum rap. What's a square? It's a square. Like that's
Yeah.
basically it's a square. Oh, okay.
One sentence.
Hi, square. But I think when you look at the square, and that's the thing, like you visit a Masonic lodge, you see them open up, their volume of sacred law, and you see what are the working tools that you're using. I've seen some that have giant squares, like something that you could teach a classroom with. And I've seen others that are
Wow.
really small. And I think what the square does is it helps you understand what your boundary, how to set your compass size. So this is how I'm going to square my
Mm.
actions, so that I know I'm not walking into a situation that is too big for me, that is going to be too challenging for me, so that you can look at the square to put yourself in the best position to succeed instead of struggling and then failing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. The way I think about it, I think about the relation to literal masonry, you know, like you're using that square to make sure those stones are square. They got the
Hmm.
straight edges, they're better fit for the builder's use, you know? Um, and I mean, we're always trying to become that not rough ashlar. And you can't use the rough ashlar with a square, you know? I mean, if you do, you're gonna be able to see all those imperfections and all those intricacies you got to get out. And I mean, you can use it. You can't really use the compasses with the rough ashlar, you know, or the perfect ashlar. You can't use
Right.
it to be able to tell exactly. You need the square.
Yep.
So, I mean, what an allegory for, you know, our bodies being these rough ashlars, ever moving closer to perfect. You need the square for that. And I would really relate the square, as far as Stoics go, to justice. Like, does it measure up against the virtue of justice? And they say justice is the virtue from which all the other virtues spring out of, you know?
Mm. I had to jot down repeatable success. I think that's the other thing that the square sets you up for, is that if you look at yourself as a factory and you're like, hey, I need to make perfect bricks, and bricks are moments or experiences in life, right? You're not trying to make perfect experiences every time. You're trying to set yourself up with a template so that
Mm.
Everything is uniformed and there's a repeatable success pattern here. For example, the term shit brick. I'm sure we've all heard it.
Mhm.
Maybe we've even been called it before. But what really is a shit brick? Well, if you've ever looked at a brick wall before and you
Mhm.
see that one brick that's just a little too small, a little funky, it's a little out of place, guess what that is? That's the one that nobody gave a you know what about, and that's how it got that name.
Didn't
That's
know
what
that.
a square is trying to prevent you from doing, is putting in a shit brick in your wall of success. And if you think of a wall as like your day, your month, as a term of measurement, now you're stacking all of these things up, even your life. You're trying to remove
Mhm.
those moments where you were not measured and not planning and thinking and being present. That's another thing that Marcus Aurelius talks a lot about, is being present in the moment.
100%. I mean, if you're not present, how are you able to even evaluate these things? If you're constantly in the future or you're stuck in the past, you're having too much anxiety about the future, being too depressed about the past, again, all these extremes, you're probably not present and you're probably not investigating. Like, we talk a lot about the vices and about like our negatives, but what did I succeed in today? What did I succeed in not doing today? And I think it's Epictetus, if I'm not mistaken, who Marcus Aurelius read. I think Epictetus was not too long before Marcus either. But he said, actually, I don't know if this was Epictetus or Seneca. It was one of the Holy Trinity of Stoics, of course.
Mhm.
Um, he said, "What work have I done today? I've learned to become a better friend to myself." And like I think that was Seneca actually, but like
Mm.
so profound, like such a small thing that most of us don't think about, but probably should be doing more often. They do this. They did a study, and this is something like kind of off topic, but they did a study, and they found that like pet owners are far more inclined to give their pets medication on schedule than themselves. And it goes to show you, like we end up I wouldn't like ego can be a problem, but we end up like diluting how kind we should be to ourselves,
Mhm.
especially in relation to other people. So, I mean, Seneca is, again, I think it's Seneca. Seneca's perfect for that. Be present. I know there's some things I could fix in terms of my vices and some of my missteps today, but also what did I succeed in doing or not doing that I should not have done?
Mm. It's interesting too, because people that don't tend to really like themselves or hold high value and regard of themselves, those
Hmm.
tend to be the people that engage in actions that are likely to destroy or really cause harm, injure, damage to themselves long term. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
these are the
absolutely.
people that have those, and some of it is, yes, psychological. They need professional help. Totally understand and
Undoubtedly.
agree with it. But then there's others that have allowed a habit to become a routine that has become this thing. And I,
Hmm.
I think, you and I, every time I go for a run, I sit there and go, man, this hurts. My knees are going to be so beat up tomorrow. But you know what I'm doing? I'm dropping a few more beans in the jar to, I know I can't live forever, but at least being able to be mobile still when I'm 70 years old. I'm
Heck
doing
yeah.
all of these. And once you start looking at the other benefits of doing any kind of physical activity, whether it's walking, running, just being out, I'm getting to be outside and seeing things and smelling things and enjoying things. And now I'm coming to enjoy this time more than sitting in front of the TV or playing video games. And yes, still play
Mhm.
video games at almost 50, but I also have to go out because I know I need to do these things to keep furthering, to keep building
Yeah.
a better version of myself.
Yeah, so well, again, I maybe we should have a whole podcast episode specifically on these things because I mean, I could I could talk forever and ever about this. I mean, almost all of the great Stoics were in some way physically fit. My favorite Stoic, Cleanthes, who inherited the school of Stoicism in its youngest days from the founder, was a water carrier. And I believe he was also a boxer. And
Hmm.
he was someone who was not like, he was not ashamed to put in hard physical work. Like he carried water in Athens at night so that way he could actually, I don't know if it was at night or not. I'm pretty sure he either studied at night or he carried water at night. That way he could afford to study in the morning in the Stoa with Zeno. But lots of famous Stoics. I mean, Ryan Holiday is probably our most famous, like modern known Stoic. He's a runner. He just did the marathon that marathon did, I'm pretty sure. Um, you got to build the body.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it's also Seneca who says we treat the body rigorously so it will not be disobedient to the mind, which
Mm.
is super, super important. I mean, how often will you find someone? And again, I'm not passing any judgment because I've absolutely been there, but how often have you found someone that their body probably needs a little bit of work, whose mind is like completely as sharp as it can be?
Mm.
And self-proclaimed as well. Like those people know they have something to work on. And even the people who, I mean, to most of us, average folk seem like they don't have anything they need to work on their body. Even they're aware, like, I have stuff I need to work on, you know?
Yep.
So the body and the mind are in sync. I lots of people have talked about how, you know, their best writing, their best thinking comes from walking. When I'm at work now, I'm doing a lot of this in the new year, but I could have been more consistent, but I was pretty consistent with it last year at work because I have a desk. I would leave it and go to some of these walking treadmills and work and walk at the same time. And
Nice.
it's some mind involved work, but I've always been so surprised. Like once you get your body to move, even if you're staring at three monitors while you're walking, you know, like the
Dude,
body and mind move together. And that's
I'm
super
so
important.
afraid to try that. We have a walking treadmill that am looking to set up at some point in my office here. One,
Mhm.
I just think it's going to be whenever I'm doing calls with people, it's going to sound like I got a robot chasing me. But two, it's also the coordination of I can barely walk in a straight line these days, and there's nothing wrong with me. It's just like I have to stay focused. But I would be remiss. We would be remiss if while talking about modern Stoics and kind of this balance that you're hitting on this subject. Angel
Yeah.
Millar and his book, The Path of the Warrior Mystic, being a modern man in the age of chaos. He talks about the
Yeah.
need to be a warrior and also an artist at the same time. You
A
have to
warrior and
have
a
this
mystic.
balance. Yeah,
Yep.
I
Path
love
of the
that.
Warrior Mystic. I mean, this is one of the things that really, I mean, that book was the capstone and like I got to meet this guy and I got to talk to this guy. But I mean, that again, I could riff on this for a whole episode. Like the warrior and the mystic personally to me have always been those two pillars. Not in
Mm,
terms of extremes that you need to stay away from, but as in like two archetypal parts of a well-defined individual. Like you need your intellect, you need your mind, and you need your body. And you need to be using both.
mm,
Not a stoic, but gets kind of grouped in with a lot of stoics in the modern day. A samurai named Miyamoto Musashi said, um, the way of the warrior is the twofold way of pen and paper, and he should have a taste for both. And
mm.
that was a poet and I mean, probably one of the best swordsmen who ever lived, in my humble opinion. So I mean, you got to have both. You absolutely have to have both. Angel riffs on that a ton. He includes the craftsman, which is a whole other archetypal figure in humanity. But for me personally, I think the warrior and the mystic are super important. And you can play around with, you know, synonyms for warrior, synonyms for mystic, like the intellect or the boxer, whatever it is. But any of these stoics, you saw that paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
Like Marcus Aurelius, he was learning Epictetus's words, and then he was also going to wrestling, you know, and this was the emperor of Rome.
Yep.
So, and he was a philosopher poet by night, and none of us knew it. So,
Right. And I think that's the amazing part. It wasn't that these guys were literally ripped like Greek or Roman gods, depending on what era they lived in,
mhm.
but they also were deeply intellectual in a time when we wouldn't think of like now. I had a guest on earlier. We were talking about how we live in an era where people are the most educated they've ever been because all of this information that's present. You don't have to be
Yeah,
classically trained and have a college degree anymore when you have the same kind of intelligence that was in one of our first space shuttles in your freaking pocket. Like you have Google,
manyfold, many fold.
right?
Yeah,
But you don't see a lot of guys our age walking around blowing you away with poems or deep thoughts
no,
that they put together last night. Like we live in an era now where you can get the answer to everything, but people can't even string together a complete sentence that's
nope. But
coherent. Like
they will send you TikToks and they will send you Instagram reels,
the meme
no
lives
doubt.
on. So back to Marcus Aurelius. he closes out Notebook 7 with this very powerful idea of how to carry his lessons into our daily lives. And he says it's pretty simple that, quote, perfection of character lies in this: to live each day as though it was your last, without turmoil, without listlessness, and without pretense. End quote. I have heard that quoted in so many different ways from so many different people throughout time that when I'm like, it all traces back to Marcus Aurelius, like, that's amazing. So there was that thing, but then there's the breaking it all down of like living each day like it was your last, without turmoil, without listlessness, without pretense. What does that mean to you? And how would one follow those steps?
Yeah. I think I got a bomb for you. I think what he was calling out there in many words was memento mori.
Mm,
Every action matters. And again, I think it comes down to be present. Like, be present, use gratitude, recognize that you have so much to be grateful for and so much to be thankful for, even when you don't think you have those things. And then pay those things forward in your own life. And I think that empowers each individual moment. And then when you recognize, oh man, I could be not doing this, I could be squandering the moment. And you look back at your life and you see potentially how much time you've squandered not doing that. It causes you to be present. This is something I've done a lot for sure, is to be able to like stopgap myself in the middle of a day and be like, what did I waste time on today? Even if it's just looking at your phone screen time or something like that and being like, wow, where did all that time go? Hopefully that sets you up to be more conscious when you open up your phone and you're like, oh, wait, I'm just autonomically opening my phone. Like, I'm not even thinking about this, you know? And if you were to die on that day, would you want to look in the 15th hour of your day when you pass and look and see you have 6 hours of screen time on your phone?
mm.
Like, not in my opinion, not the best use of your time. So yeah, I think be present. I think be remember those who have came before you, like personally in your own life, who have given you what they've given you, and pay that forward. Pay that forward in your actions. And I think that empowers you to give your actions meaning. And when your actions have meaning, I mean, you could die on that day and probably be happy.
Damn, dude, you took exactly where I was going with this. Because I was thinking of your story when you said you have like 3 screens at work, and I'm like, wow, I think the second screen is the bane of all existence. When I know
Oh
people
wow.
that, like, I got my laptop, but then I got my second screen over here, and then I got a
I
third.
I actually have 4 screens at my desk, but I have 3 screens at the walking desk.
Such a nerd.
It's
Actually,
bad.
the one I dream is the curved big giant screen. Like,
Oh, I had one of those in my first ever IT job. Hated it. It
all
was
right,
so bad.
well,
So bad.
you're not going to know when I win the lottery, but there'll be some signs.
There will be
That might
signs.
be one of them.
Double curved monitors on top of each other.
But I think we've all been in this situation where, I don't know if your workplace uses Teams or Zoom or whatever the the virtual office messaging system is. But I was in a Teams meeting and I was literally not paying attention because it didn't have anything to do with me, and I was
Mhm.
off on the other side going through my emails when all of a sudden I heard, and Michael, this is now going to be your responsibility. I was like, what will be my responsibility? And now I'm fully invested. And so when you talk about being present, let me just give you kind of like my interpretation of it, because the first instinct was, I was sitting in a meeting about reorganizing some of the tasks and responsibility of our team, which a lot of teams do this, at the beginning or just any time during the year. And something that fell way outside of my job description now just became one of my
Mm.
roles and responsibilities. It's also something I really don't know anything about. It kind of connects to what I do, but very like dotted line ish. But guess what?
Yeah.
That doesn't matter because somebody decided that's getting kicked over to me. So normally when somebody takes something that's not yours and tries to put it on your plate, your first instinct is to say no and find a way to
Mhm.
shove it away. And trust me, I was going through all of those scenarios in my head, like, somebody just pulled a slot machine and I'm just trying to spit out 3 bars here to say why you cannot give this to me. Until I stopped for a moment and said, well, wait a second. What if there's a hidden opportunity in here and I'm just not seeing it?
Exactly.
And I would say I probably would have never really had that little moment in time that felt like once I made that gear shift change. It was like a 5-second, like, but it was literally something that took like a second turn. I'm like, well, wait a second. And I caught myself saying this out loud. I'm like, well, what if this is really an opportunity for our team? I was like, what? And I think the lady who knew she was handing, the shit brick off to me knew how I felt about it. And I was like, wait,
Of course.
there's somebody on my team that is looking for an opportunity to do something like this. Not exactly this, but I think I could work with her, and I think she'd do really good. And if we can get this new task that falls outside of our purview to fit into the objectives and the goals that we have, like, this is why they give bonuses out at the end of the year, because you're able to turn stuff like. So I started thinking of all of the positive implications that could come from that. And that would be the example that I would give when it comes to being present. Because when people are like, well, what does being present mean? Like, I'm always here in life, I'm not going anywhere. It's like, no. Being present
Yeah, sure.
is really at that moment. If your life is a video game, you've got both hands on the controller and you are locked
Yep.
in, dude. That's what being present
big time.
is.
Yeah, I mean, if someone were to say that to me, I wouldn't laugh, but I would say, like, let's be present here together for 1 minute and let's see how it goes. Like, it's so hard to be present.
Oh yeah.
One of my brothers, before he became a brother in our fraternity, and I would talk all the time throughout the pandemic when we'd have these like philosophical conversations about how how much throughout the day do you think the average person is truly present and reflecting? And we
Mm,
both kind of came to the conclusion that most people are probably only present one time during the day, especially in the middle of the pandemic, by the way. But like, most people are only present when their head hits the pillow at night and you have all those thoughts that come back to you where you reflect on your day. Just try to have multiples of those. I got to say about being present though, and the responsibility you were given at work. I actually think about this a lot at work because I have that same, like, one of my vices. If I'm pushed some responsibility from someone else that I know, especially they have the capacity to do, I feel this urge and this push in myself to say that same no. But it almost feels like I don't know. It's just something I'm trying to chisel on my own rough ashlar, right? Um, but in meditations, Marcus talks about how he dreamt he had ivory shoulders, and lots of people like go back and forth on the interpretation on this, but the concept was that he could do it. Like, he could be emperor. I'm pretty sure this was before he was emperor.
hmm.
And when he was going to become emperor, he dreamt he had ivory shoulders, meaning he was strong enough. He had the resilience that he could take that mantle of responsibility upon himself and be okay. And I kind of think that's what, like, when we're given responsibilities, you're being called upon to say, do you have the shoulders? Like, can you carry this responsibility? And there
Right.
can be too much responsibility, of course. I mean, undoubtedly, but you can always get better at carrying the responsibility.
That's the whole perfection of character theme that we're trying to hit on here. Yeah. And the other thing of it is you hit on another key word about meaning. And
Yeah,
so we talked about how, I had made the comment, well, hey, when you talk about vices, sometimes Freemasonry can be a vice. And I think it can.
it can be, definitely.
But
I'm sure there's many ways for it to be a vice, of
oh,
course.
absolutely. But here's why I think, well, at least for me, why Freemasonry becomes a vice is because there's meaning in Freemasonry for me. Like, me going to lodge isn't an exercise in having to attend lodge because I feel like I have to be there because of some obligation or guilt that I have. No, that's not the case. That's not it at all. I have to go to work every day because I need this thing called a paycheck so I can support my way of life and my family. That's why I go to work every day. Do I get meaning out of my work? Sometimes, not every
Hmm.
day. Sometimes I really have to, as you talk about, like, reflect and think about, like, oh yeah, that moment that I had at work today, that experience, that has meaning. That's going to help me become a better character. But very rarely, man. Where does the real meaning happen for me? In the relationships and the interactions that I have with my lodge brothers. And I'm not saying this as like a pitch to go join a lodge or become a Freemason, because it's really hard to explain when you talk about join Freemasonry where meaning has value, but it does. Like, one, you feel like you belong to something. moving back to Albany from the capital, the DC capital area, for example, when I would call brothers and say, "Hey, I'm moving back to Albany," like, "Oh man, we can't wait to have you come back here. This is going to be so exciting." Regular friends and family that some of my family got excited, but like regular friends were like, "Oh, that's cool. Well, hey, we'll have to hang out when you move back, man." It wasn't like, "Oh, can't. When are you coming back? Are you going to be back in time for this? Because we could go to this, or we could do that." Like instantly getting booked for things like that, and
Yeah.
that was the meaning that I missed were those connections. Um, the other meaning is too is like I never sit there and go, "Oh man." Well, sometimes on really long degree nights, but I never sit there and go, "Oh man, I am just sitting here in lodge and like, what is the purpose of this?" Like, I always look forward to going to lodge meetings, even if I have no real role that night. Just being there is so much more meaningful to me than the alternative, which is sitting at home and playing. I love sitting at home and playing video games, but that's just a time waster, to be honest with you. I'm not getting better at anything in life by
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah. All things in balance. Well, I gotta say, shameless plug, shout out Mount Vernon Lodge number 3 up here in Albany, New York. I mean, I want to say everything you just said, but about the brothers in that lodge. I mean,
Mm,
I feel like everything we do is meaningful together. Like we're always having good conversations. There's a particular brother, I don't know if I want to say his name or not, but him and I actually had, I think it was last year or the year before, we sat down over the course of the Masonic year outside of lodge. We met in lodge and we would get together and we were talking, each of us, about one vice we were working on for the year, and we were keeping each other in check. Like, be like,
mm,
how did you do this week? Or since I last saw you in the past 2 weeks or whatever. And it was amazing. Like, I have friends that I can kind of have that conversation with, but they won't necessarily keep me in check. You know, you're kind of just part of the same community and you're
mhm.
doing things, and
It's
maybe,
accountability.
yeah, like there's almost like a social accountability, right? But with this brother, I mean, we were, hey, you told me you were doing this 2 weeks
Mhm.
ago. Like, did you keep up on it? And then what else did you do? And I've had conversations like that with many brothers from other lodges, but like Mount Vernon, I've had that a multitude of times with people. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing like it in the fraternity like that. I
And
agree.
then here's the weird thing. This is a guy that you've probably known not even a thumbnail amount of time as some of the other friends that you grew up with, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the amount of
Exactly.
time that you spend with this brother every month is really just a handful of hours. You spend more time with people that you work with or, people at your dojo or
Yeah.
at your gym, right?
Yep.
But here you are feeling like I need to be accountable to this person because I respect them and they respect
Hmm.
me and I don't want to let them down because in a way I'd be letting myself down.
Exactly. It's a meaningful interaction. And I mean, you can you can certainly artificially thrust meaning into more situations in your life, but there's something about interacting with a brother like that that, I mean, I guess I could shout out Angel for this too. I mean, Angel's helped me a lot in that regard. And I'm sure there's many brothers out there that keep everyone in check, no doubt.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's wrap it up because I know we said we're going to do this for an hour and I know that you and I could go an entire evening talking
Another
about
2 hours.
this.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. It's super bonus time. But I'll get you out of here on this question, Brother Franklin. And we'll stick with the Stoics approach and taking that
Yeah.
approach and combining that mindset with our Masonic teachings and just thinking about the things that we were talking about tonight. And it's tough. I'm not going to discount this. Like we can say it and it's like, oh, you're just saying a phrase, but we live in some really freaking crazy times right now, dude. Like I
We
couldn't
do.
even tell you what is going to be the news story a week from now, much less a month before. I was even thinking about this, like, what are we going to be talking about the end of this year? Like,
The
who
aliens are
knows?
coming,
Yes.
brother RC. Get ready.
So I think it's the question that people will look at us and say, okay, well, great. You read these books that are 2,000 years old from, really smart dead guys. Like, how are you taking all this ancient wisdom and how are you using this to be better in a world that you walk outside and it's immediately giving you the double birds as soon as you didn't even get a chance to get out your front door of your house?
Mm. Well, for that, if you give me a moment, I think I have to pull up to the the chapter you and I were actually talking about right in the beginning. Um, this is out of book two, notebook two, whatever, out of Meditations. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and I've recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own, not of the same blood or birth, but the same mind, and possessing a share of the divine. And so none of them can hurt me. And that's like half of the paragraph. There's a lot more to it. But I mean, just remind yourself every day no one's perfect. Marcus Aurelius lived in some incredibly tumultuous times. He died from a plague, not too different, I presume, from the virus that we got through. He saw wars. Like his predecessor lived in some of the most peaceful times in Rome, to my understanding. And Marcus lived and ruled through some of the most tumultuous parts of Rome. So you just got to wake up and realize the world's not perfect. We're not waking up in Plato's cave, Plato's world, Plato's republic, none of that. And you just got to do your best. Reflect on virtue, reflect on the divine, and just do your best to be better than who you were yesterday.
Dude, I love that. I now I as soon as you started reading that, I'm like, oh, I don't have it in this one because as I told you when we got started, I lent out my original version of Meditations and somebody never got it back. So they probably saw whenever I read a book, it's highlighted. I have notes written all over the place. And that was one of the phrases that really got to me. Because I'm
It's
like,
so good.
oh, dude, when you think about it, it's like, yeah, every day I'm gonna run into people who their mission, what they think a win is for them, is just to make sure that I'm not having a good one today. And I'm gonna understand that in a way. I'm gonna kind of give a little respect, like, okay, I get it. I see where you're kind
Yeah.
of coming from, but I'm not gonna buy into that temptation. Like, I'm gonna be better than this. I'm not going to let somebody else's actions influence
Hmm.
me.
Big time. Big time. I mean, and are those people being present? Are they being conscious of the good and evil
Mm,
paradigms, those two pillars that they're between, you know?
right.
Um, we have the opportunity as Freemasons to use these tools and to really just use virtue to be more present and to, in moments like that, do what we know is right. So I'm right there with you. I work on this every morning in traffic.
That's a good place to end this one. I love it. Brother Franklin Rings, thank you so much for your time on this edition of the Craftsman Online podcast.
Thank you, Bro RC. It's a pleasure and honor as always.